However, when I first started, those of you that are, well, I don't have the contacts, or someone will come trying to come up with some excuses. The route I took when I first made that transition was simply driving for dollars, looking for properties that needed work. All this information is public record,
Hmm.
meaning that I found a property that needed work. The parking lot looked like an alligator's back. The signage was outdated and it just looked very bland. So I searched that through the local county here in Indianapolis, saw who the owner was. Well, not their actual first and last name because it was owned in an LLC,
Right.
but you can see who filed that LLC. And then from there is you have their first and last name, and then you skip trace. You can use something such as truepeoplesearch.com, white pages. You can just Google search. Hopefully, their name is not as common as John Smith.
Right.
That would not be so pleasant. But then from there, you get their contact information. You either give them a call, send a direct mail piece. In terms of whichever channel that you're using, I use cold call.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to Weiss Advice. I am your host, Yona Weiss. Today, I have a very special guest, Sterling White. Thanks for joining me, Sterling.
Awesome. Everyone, welcome. Bring your bags because there's going to be tons of golden nuggets that are dropped, and you want to come behind us and pick each and every one of those up. So welcome.
That's awesome. Yeah, get your notepads out. Make sure you're paying full attention here. We're going to be going full speed ahead with this one. A little background, just to give you guys context. Sterling is, Sterling is he's gold. He's gold. He's sterling, but he's gold. And, just a little bit about him. He's been in the real estate industry. You may have seen him on Bigger Pockets. He's very active on the platform. He's doing a lot of videos, a lot of content creation. With that, he was a guest on the Bigger Pockets podcast, which is, that in of itself is like, that's something everyone's got to check off their list to be, to make it, but he's been in the industry for, about a decade, and currently is in multifamily, transition from single family investments into multifamily, currently owns just under 500 units. His company is called Sonder Investment Group. And, you should really check him out there, especially check out his podcast, which is the Real Estate Experience podcast with Sterling White. So without further ado, Sterling, just tell me a little bit about, how it was that, obviously you've spoken before about going from single family to multifamily, but more about, what's your why in doing that?
Yeah, I would say my ultimate why when I'm working towards is for many people that are just now coming across me is I was born in the not so good parts of the city, the pretty rough neighborhoods in which fraternal twin brother, single mother, dad wasn't around, and the moments I do recall of him just were not very pleasant. And I remember one instance, my brother and I were actually sitting at we were about 6 years old. We're eating dinner and it's like Roman noodles and cut up hot dogs, something along those lines. And as soon as we go upstairs, we're done, is a bullet comes right through the back patio where we were sitting. So I may not be here, he may not be here, but that's one of the fueling
Wow.
points for me. And additionally, I got started in entrepreneurship because we grew up on food stamps, government assistance, Section 8 housing. And that's another fuel because I don't want to go back to that. Started in real estate. This was in 2009, 2013. Bought my very first deal, no money out of pocket,
Wow.
and scaled up to 150 single families. And then in 2017, made the complete shift to multifamily. So, of course, there's a lot to
There's a
unpack in
lot,
there,
there's a
but
lot in there.
yeah, that's a little bit in terms of my journey.
Yeah, there's a ton in there, and we can go into every little aspect of that. But what interests me the most is how, you're talking about buying properties with no money down, right? And
Mhm.
and scaling, to 150 single families. I mean, to some people that just seems absurd. Like, how do you do that? But you're not the first person that's brought that up. But that's what fascinates me the most is that people, when you have a drive and you have that why, you figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're not committed enough, you don't have a large enough why, you'll come up with the excuse. Oh, it's my kids, or they could someone who grew up in the environment I could use that very same thing as a crutch. But I
Yeah,
decided to use the complete opposite and use it as fuel. But what really helped me was really the self-improvement and really hone in on my mindset. And that really laid the foundation to where I didn't go into a lot of those limiting beliefs and use excuses, but just decided to take action.
that's incredible. So give me one or two of those, taking action, mindsets that you have, like things that on a regular basis or things that you just drive into yourself and, that push you.
Yeah, I would say one is I am not afraid to get kicked in the face. Well, not literally kicked in the face, you guys. That would not be fun. But so I go direct to owner to purchase deals. And
Yeah.
oftentimes is I'll be driving past an apartment of an owner who may have just hung up on me, or I've given them an offer and they just didn't take it so well. I will still drop in on their office completely cold. So that is a way to just take action and really step myself out of my comfort zone. On top of that is really just writing my goals down on a daily basis as a way to, hey, Sterling, this is where you're going. This is where you need to focus.
Yeah.
Of course, what I've experienced in the whole entrepreneurship realm, you have your ups and downs. But as long as you have your why and what you're ultimately working towards, that'll allow you to be able to weather the storm.
Interesting. And did you have like a coach at a certain point or someone that was pushing you, to kind of scale and to do that?
Yeah. So when I first started out, I actually had a mentor in which this person I worked for completely free. And some people were thinking, wow, for free, they didn't have to pay you anything. So I went to college, got in debt for that, didn't get anything from it. And then I ended up working for that individual for completely free,
Wow.
learned so much in terms of the industry. And that's the person who I partnered with on my very first deal, which was a single family house.
Wow. And so, I mean, people hearing this, especially students, and people thinking like, why would you work for free? And people understand the idea of an internship, right? Where you're working as an unpaid intern, and the experience that you gain from just following along side by side people who have that real life experience is so much more than anything you'll get in a classroom.
Yeah, the classroom is not as I would say is not very practical, and many of the times I would say the actual professor hasn't actually been in the field. But if you're
Right.
able to get someone work alongside them and get really the hands on, so that very first deal, which was the property $25,000, very affordable here in Indianapolis. You couldn't
Yeah.
get it for that much now, and then put 25 into it. And then my partner mentor said, "All right, Sterling, go figure everything else out." So I just got thrown into the fire. They still helped along, but that's how I was able to get the hands-on experience in
Oh,
terms of leasing, property management, taking the incoming complaints from the residents, solving those problems, etc.
wow. And and you wrote a book also, 0 to 400 units, right? So you're talking about that journey from single families, and then at what point did you decide? I mean, 150 single families, that's a lot.
Yeah, and at that point it was because had many of those, a large amount that were in Indianapolis and then also in Dayton, Ohio, and decided, hey, where do both my partner and I at the time, where do we ultimately want to go and what is more efficient to scale? And then that's where it made the most sense to transition to multifamily.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have made that decision. It's much harder to scale with single families than it is multifamily. You can buy a 150 unit all under one roof, right? And you got
I've done that. Yes. Yeah. And I tell you, acquiring that was one, there's one transaction, there is one seller, all the units are multiple in one location versus with the single family, acquiring that many was anywhere between about 120 to 130 transactions. So from that, you're having to look through a lot of deals just in order to get one or two, because a lot of those were just packages, maybe one off, two here, three
Mhm.
here at most. So it was very difficult and management intensive.
And so you mentioned before that you are, getting out of your comfort zone to call directly to owners, right? And trying to find those deals for these multifamily properties. how do you find them? Like, what's without giving away all your secrets, obviously, but
I
you know,
give it all away. Yeah, I mean, I'm here to help bring the value.
yeah, how do you find the owners? I know that's a challenge for a lot of people, and I mean, there's paid sources like CoStar and these things that they have a lot of data. Not all of it's accurate, but it's very expensive.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to get into is leveraging CoStar. There's another source that is Reonomy. However, when I first started, those of you that are, well, I don't have the contacts or someone will come trying to come up with some excuses. The route I took when I first made that transition was simply driving for dollars, looking for properties that needed work. All this information is public record,
Hmm.
meaning that I found a property that needed work. The parking lot looked like an alligator's back. The signage was outdated and it just looked very bland. So I searched that through the local county here in Indianapolis, saw who the owner was. Well, not their actual first and last name because it was owned in an LLC,
Right?
but you can see who filed that LLC. And then from there is you have their first and last name, and then you skip trace. You can use something such as truepeoplesearch.com, white pages. You can just Google search. Hopefully, their name is not as common as John Smith.
Right.
That would not be so pleasant. But then from there, you get their contact information. You either give them a call, send a direct mail piece. In terms of whichever channel that you're using, I use cold call.
That's awesome. And I think that's a great approach. Obviously, it takes a lot of work. There's a lot of legwork involved there, right? But because there's a lot of legwork involved, you are going to, be much more persistent in doing that, and you're going to be way ahead of the majority of other people who are just not going to make the effort.
Yeah, there's that. And what I found oftentimes is whatever channel you're using is that it's consistency and follow up. Because normally, just cold call, for instance, it takes between the 6 to 8 attempts just to get in contact with the person. And the same thing, let's say you're using direct mail. I had someone reach out to me and said, I've tried the direct mail route, doesn't work. I said, how many campaigns did you send out? They said one. I was like, well, there you go. It's about consistency and the follow up.
Yeah, follow up, consistency, absolutely. And like I said, you're going to be ahead of the game because that one guy who said it didn't work for him because he tried it once. But if you're consistent, you're doing it over and over again. And I think this is great advice for anyone in any type of sales, job or
It's all
anything. Because
sales.
exactly, I mean, you're trying to call these, apartment owners, you're trying to buy something from them. They don't want to hear from people most of the time. I won't give you the time of day, like you said, 6 to 8 times until you get through or actually get a real conversation. That's a lot of persistence.
Yeah, and many of the times they're not interested up front. So it's all about the follow up and just staying top of mind because things happen in people's lives to where they could be not motivated and then they may need the cash for maybe a venture or they need to pay some bills, etc. And if you're right there, right place at the right time, there you go. But that comes from the follow up, the consistency, and the persistence.
Yeah, persistence is key. And like you said, top of mind. People they're going to remember you and they may reach out back to you. So can you paint a picture, like give me a story about, one of the deals that you found through this method?
Yeah, so 80 unit, I like to say Louisville, Kentucky, but it's actually Louisville, Kentucky, in which it took the seventh attempt just to get in contact with the decision maker. And this was instead of doing the driving for dollars approach, I actually just used Reonomy, a source like that, and just went through the data and ended up finding this property that was just under rented. And in terms of there was value on that, so I called the owner. Well, it took multiple times. The seventh attempt ended up getting in touch with them. And it was actually the owner's son who got thrown into the fire to manage the property, had no business experience, great
Wow.
guy, by the way, and had no property management experience alone. Property was 70% occupied.
Wow.
And so, in essence, when I had the first conversation with them, they seemed well, not really interested at this moment, but I could tell from his side that he wanted nothing to do with the property. But the dad, they owned it free and clear, so 70% occupancy, they were doing fine. So
Hmm.
just to fast forward is 5 months of constant follow up from I was doing personal visits to the property. So I'm here in Indianapolis. I would make a drive there. I would say, hey, Bill, I'm actually going to be in the neighborhood. Would love to stop by and chat. I'll actually bring you over some coffee. And so from that, those were different ways I was following up. And then that final, this was about the fifth or sixth month, they said, okay, we're ready to sell. And then there were other people that were reaching out to them, and they
Hmm.
ended up getting just strictly staying with us due to the relationship
Wow.
and the rapport that was built. So that's the importance of the real follow up.
That's awesome. And I think that's a lesson that can be learned, you know, from this, that it's, they went with you. And I could imagine, you know, once, I'm sure you weren't the only person that had found this, like, you know, gem of a property out there that was undervalued and, you know, under rented, because people can find that out, you know, and there's a lot of competition out there, a lot of people looking at deals, but the fact that they stuck with you due to that rapport that you built, due to that relationship, that speaks volumes to this method.
Yeah, and one little tactical thing that I always do when I'm going to meet with someone is I always bring a thank you card. And I always handwrite it myself. And I've ran into cases where I've met with an owner and I've had the thank you card, and they've actually called. Well, we went out to breakfast. It was his name's Steven. And when as soon as we left, he actually called me and said, "I'm so sorry. I actually left the card. I'm actually going to have to go back and grab it. My apologies." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, thank you for letting me know." But that goes to show you, I never realized, well, I knew how impactful it was, but I never realized that much of an impact it really leaves for someone to call someone and
Wow.
say, "I left it. I'm gonna go back and grab it."
Yeah, people, because again, you said it's about the relationships. If people want to deal with a human, and showing that gratitude, that's one of the best ways to, you know, to create that relationship, by just sending a gift or giving a thank you card, or just going out of your way to do something that the majority of the people won't do. So you're setting
Yeah,
yourself ahead of the pack. um,
exactly. And these are all the things I've learned from sales. It's all sales. And yeah, just being creative, follow up, and about building a relationship.
Awesome. So now you have, you know, you're this big famous, you know,
Oh no,
multifamily.
no, not yet, not yet, not there.
But you know, you got, it's, I think it's awesome that you're on Bigger Pockets and you're doing these video series that you got going on, and you're posting on social media, all this stuff. And the thought leadership, right? You got the podcast going on, you got all the social media stuff. You know, for someone starting out who may be listening to this and like, I think I'd like to get involved in real estate. And I know there's a lot of passive investors that listen to this show. So people who are just, they're listening because they enjoy learning about the people that are operating real estate, the people that are involved in these things. You know, but for that one person, or those few people that are listening to this, that trying to get started in real estate, and they're thinking about starting a podcast, or thinking of starting a thought leadership, or something like that, what would one tip be for them to kind of get ahead in doing that?
And I know you're familiar with this because we both follow the same influence. Well, I would say influencer Gary Vee, where he talks about documenting versus creating.
Hmm.
So that's one thing for people who are starting out that really helped me when I first started, and really putting my brand out there, because I'm the personal brand, and that filters down to my various companies. And so with that is just to tell what you're currently doing versus coming from the standpoint, 5 tips to be able to buy your first deal,
Right.
or something along those lines. One of the, just to give you guys an actual practical, when I first started on Bigger Pockets, I was doing the same route. Was I actually documented in terms of my very first wholesale deal that I absolutely butchered. It didn't go so well, and I posted it and put it on there and got quite a bit of exposure from it. But that was a deal that ended up going south. And so that those are the types of things, is share your learning experiences, where you are now. And
Right.
then also what I was doing in the forums or other, I was still giving back to people who were where I formerly was. So value, value, value at the end of the day, and document versus create.
Awesome. That's sterling advice. That's beautiful. No, that's awesome. I definitely agree that the documenting and sharing your stories, right? Sharing just where you're at, right? People relate to that because, again, it goes back to the relationship. It goes back to the human experience. People aren't going to want to do business, or be, you know, do anything with just someone who is a fact machine, right? Just putting out
I agree.
content for the sake of putting out content. Sure, there are going to be people that are going to learn from that, and that's valuable, and it has its place. And you know, that should be in the mix, right? But sharing the journey, and just showing, hey, I'm just like you. This is where I'm at. We'll have this fail. Cold calls. The guy, called the guy 25 times. He hasn't picked up the phone, right? 26th time he answered the call, right?
And and
That's what people want to hear.
and this is one thing I've actually pivoted more is opening up my life, my daughter, me going on trips, my hobbies, personal hobbies and things I do outside of work, because that goes back to what you were saying is for the longest time I was just focused on just doing a ton of business, but I've been incorporating more of everything else because I believe social media is becoming more of, as we mentioned offline, is it's unregulated. I don't do anything over the top in terms of that, but just providing people to understand more of who am I
Yeah.
on the individual, because I'm always on this self evolving and wanting to understand and be more self-aware of who is Sterling White. In my childhood, all those experiences that shaped me to who I am now. So those are things that I'm also
Yeah.
wanting to understand too. So always looking to evolve.
Sure. And what about your goals? Like, where do you see yourself? Or what, you have goals. Obviously, you mentioned you're writing down your goals, but what do you see yourself? What's your goal? A year, 5 years from now.
Yeah, I would say one of my large goals or ultimate wise is really being an ideal and a message for those individuals who were in the environment that I grew up in. Because when I was there, I didn't even know that there was something things outside of that. Besides, there was gang activity, a lot of negative influences, and unfortunately, my twin brother ended up taking that type of path, and I took a completely separate one trajectory. However, I felt, and there's this quick story I want to share with everyone. I had this moment where I was actually on a boat at this college party, having a good time, and I was out there on just in the middle of this canoe or boat, whatever you want to call it, in this lake. Beaming question comes down to me and says, "Sterling, is this what you want to do with your life?" And I answer back to that question, "No, this is not." And that's where I really changed a
Wow.
different trajectory in my life. And I don't know who it was exactly in terms of that pulled me out of that. But that's in essence is I want to give back to whatever, if it was me, higher being, that it happened for a reason. And I believe other people experience that, but they may not be ready once they do hear it. And I was ready. So I just want to get back to those individuals that came from where I came
That's awesome story. And it's incredible where that voice or whatever that comes from. And it's a lesson that can be learned for everyone. I truly believe that once you've been pulled out or you've removed yourself from a certain situation or, life experience where you're like different and you've been given that privilege, but you've also been given that responsibility to now go back and be an influence for those people who are still in that situation.
Yeah, and I've had people and that I've went to college with that says something's different about you. You're weird. And I'm like, well, that must be a good thing because I enjoy where I'm going. I'm constantly pushing towards that, and this is one thing that I've also adopted more and more is just caring less. There's certain things that I do care about, but in terms of people's opinions,
Yeah,
is that's one thing. Growing up, I cared so much about that, but as you get older, you start to not care because it really doesn't matter how someone else thinks about you. It's more about how you believe in yourself and what you think about yourself at the end of the day.
absolutely. Absolutely. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to jump right into the final four now, Sterling.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're going to get to the first question we ask every guest is what is the worst job that you ever had?
Oh, Marsh. This was a grocery store and they're no longer in business, but I've never really had a job. I've always had a job to fund my various ventures, but this was one, and this goes to show you how much I didn't enjoy the job. Was this was 2 or 3 months into it. I remember I felt so much in terms of I dreaded going to work. I felt like a clog in the wheel that I remember I was taking out the trash and I was going, there's like this little mini gas station where I had to go grab the trash. And when I went to go, I walked out of the store and I went to go grab the trash and I just walked right on home. I was done. And then ever since then, I just focused solely on entrepreneurship. So by far the worst job that I've had.
Awesome. And I love the fact that, at a certain point you just realize it and then you're gone, the trajectory just pushes you in that direction. So I love that. Second question. If there's a book that you've read that's given you a paradigm shift, okay, so a book that's made you think totally different about something.
Yeah, I would say it was a audiobook and it was Lead the Field by Earl Nightingale. Huge.
Hmm.
He was one person that was very impactful in terms of my mindset. And those of you, he is before the Tony Robbins, probably right around the Zig Ziglar era, but he's the one that really came up with what we know is audiobook, which is listening while learning. So Earl Nightingale, Lead the Field, huge. I listened to those, actually grabbed CDs from the local library, listened to them so many times, I actually scratched them, but huge.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Third question: what is a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
Spanish.
You'd like to learn Spanish?
Yes, yes,
Great. That's
yes.
awesome.
I had it in my queue and then I stopped to focus. I need to get back to it. That's all. There's no excuses.
Okay. Well, we'll hope to hear the follow up on that.
Yes.
And the fourth and final question: what does success mean to you?
So one is just really doing what you enjoy and love. And one I'll from Earl Nightingale is success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal. So as long as you're working towards a goal, you know what you're working towards. I believe that is a success. However, if you're not working towards a goal and you don't know where you're going and you're just drifting through life, and then you fast forward, you're 80 years old, you look back and say, what the heck did I end up doing? And now you're full of regret. That's what I say is not successful. However, if you fast forward, you look back and say, man, I absolutely crushed it. I don't know how much I could have done. You really were able to push towards your potential. Myself personally, would say that's success.
I love that because it's like micro success, right? It's like it's not focusing on thinking like I have to be somewhere and like have this unattainable goal, whatever. It's no real goals, and then just accomplish, just a feeling of accomplishment of doing things. That itself is successful. So I love that. I love that twist you have on that.
Mhm.
How can people reach out to you if people want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can visit my Instagram at Sterling White Official. One more time, that is Sterling White Official. And then also a website, sonderinvestmentgroup.com, and that is Sonder investmentgroup.com.
Awesome. So who's the unofficial Sterling White? That's what I want to know.
Well, I wanted to get the person who has just the Sterling White handle, and I offered to buy it from him. That was on Snapchat, though. I cannot reach out to him on Instagram and also Facebook, but that's a whole nother topic.
Come on, you're good at the cold calling, at the tracking down the lead.
That's what I should do, or just show up to wherever they're at.
Oh man, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Sterling. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope our audience got a lot of golden nuggets out of this because I certainly did. It's been awesome.
Awesome. Keep crushing everyone. Keep being awesome.
And thanks so much. And to our audience again, don't forget, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.